drug, on alcoholism and drug dependence. Endorsed
NCADD.
it. Yes, and they had sent it to all their 80 affiliates in 29 states.
So now there's two films. There's two different lengths.
There's still different versions of the film.
Okay.
One takes out a little bit of the extra music, which we find very entertaining. And the lovely thing about this film is all the music, the whole soundtrack, is from Justin.
Okay, so you must love to hear that.
All this, and not even the material that was in the CD. There's more than that. So it's a beautiful thing. But so it's something that we can share through our by sending it out without charging anyone, and it's
Right.
available by going to the website. I can tell you what the
tell them
website. The website is whispering-spirits.com. Now it's important to put the dash in.
Okay.
Whispering-spirits.com, and one can actually watch the film in its entirety, and also fill out a form to get a copy of it. If you're a teacher or an organization, there's absolutely no charge.
Okay.
As long as that grant money lasts.
That's
And
great.
We're hoping it'll last quite a bit longer.
Yeah, so now who did you get the grant from?
We got the grant from the co-founder, Stephen Apcon, the co-founder of the Jacob Mearns Film Center.
Okay, very nice.
And he's doing other work now. He created a company called Reconsider, and they've sponsored some very amazing films that contribute back to society. It's one of the films is Disturbing the Peace, it's called, and
Okay.
it's been shown around the world. And the aim is to unite the Palestinians and the Israelis.
All right.
And they have had screenings in Jerusalem and different parts of the Middle East, and it's gotten a tremendous response. So he's doing all these things, and he's actually mentored, I gotta say, Sean Gallagher, who produced the film. I don't want to miss
Right.
mentioning his name.
He produced your film?
He did. He was the writer. He was there doing the interviews. He had a photographer with him, Justin Dubrinsky, both out of the Jacob Mearns Film Center.
I know
Yeah.
Justin Dubrinsky. He
Yes.
donated Macs to us.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, big ones.
So he did a great. I mean, this is top-rate film work,
Yeah.
and we were amazed. So, it's there, and I do a talk. I can do a talk alongside the film. I can do a talk, after it. I can do two versions of a talk. My long talk is a message from Justin, which is 40 minutes for student assemblies. But I do a shorter talk now that connects marijuana to more serious drugs.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. At first, most of the thinking is, well, marijuana is not in the same category as the opioid drugs, and we certainly thought that. A lot of kids and young people, they shouldn't be, but they're smoking marijuana, they're experimenting. We found since that time that studies show that it's very damaging to a young person's mind. In fact, they're talking now about the fact that one should wait till they're 28. You have to have a mature brain before you can experiment with these things and be safe. So my thinking has changed, though, because of what happened to Justin. And as I reconstructed and what happened to your Justin, all of the young people that I've heard of that have died from an opioid overdose have started with marijuana. And the studies show that if you're experimenting with marijuana, you're twice as likely to abuse opioid painkillers, 3 times more likely to become addicted to heroin.
If you're experimenting with marijuana.
Yes, and that 92% of all heroin users started with marijuana. Now there
and
are
not alcohol.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of make
Yeah.
that distinction, because I find the same thing, that the parents that we work with that have kids that are addicted, they started with pot, not with alcohol.
Yeah,
and so there's something about that connection that's different than alcohol.
Right, and our Justin wasn't really drawn to alcohol at all. I mean, he had a beer occasionally or something, but it was marijuana. And we're finding now there are new studies that have come out, and there's an organization that's done a lot of work. It's called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and I know Kevin Sabet, who is the co-founder of that organization, is going to be speaking in Cortland in the near future, and you'll be talking more about that.
Yep.
I was at a conference with him in Atlanta, Georgia, just last week, where we presented talks at their summit meeting. Met a lot of great people from around the country, and the stories I get are amazing.
Did they present findings? Did he present findings?
There's lots of new research. There's a whole page. If you go to learnaboutsam.org, that's easy to remember, right?
Right.
Learnaboutsam.org. They have page after page and new studies, and they've spent a lot of time studying the states that have legalized marijuana in one form or another.
Good.
Particularly Colorado.
Because it's the longest.
Yeah, Colorado has had a very difficult time, and they're not talking about it.
Right.
They're painting a rosy picture about how marijuana has been good for their state, but it's turning into a big business enterprise that's hurting a lot of people. And they have a lot of research about what marijuana has done to people in Colorado. And that marijuana industry is turning to the concentrated forms of marijuana, the so-called hash oils and things like that,
right.
that are getting to be very high in THC.
Right,
way
75
beyond,
to 90%.
Yeah, it's not the marijuana that we as young kids knew,
right.
Or our parents knew. It's much stronger.
Even the pot itself, even if it's weed, is not the same.
Right.
It's very high concentrations of THC.
Right.
And also, I was to a conference too that talked about the different types of marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Some will make you tired, some will make you excited and energetic. So it's amazing what they're doing. And I asked the question, were they spraying those weeds? And they're not. They are breeding them so that they have different outcomes for the user.
Yeah, and
I think it's amazing and outrageous.
When the goal for the producers has been to raise the THC levels, the CBD levels are a different thing. They're the ones that have been found to be more of a medicinal purpose. The THC combined with it by a certain amount has been found, but they need to do more research on cannabinoids and how they impact the body. And certainly there's a great medicine in this plant. But the goal for the producers out in Colorado and everywhere is to raise the levels of THC so people are drawn to use it as a drug.
So what do you think? 30 states in our country in some form have legalized marijuana.
30? Is it that many?
Yeah, 8 of them are recreational.
Yeah, I was thinking of the 8 or 9.
8 are recreational, but that's where they start with legalizing it for medicinal, and they work their way to recreational. What's your opinion about that?
Well, it's dangerous, and you know, most people would say, well, we don't really care about a 30-year-old, deciding to smoke marijuana. That's their business. But we don't want it to happen to our kids because we know it can be quite damaging. It can ruin their lives, and it is ruining their lives every day. People aren't as concerned about marijuana as they should be. They are concerned about the opioids because you can take a drug and die right away, and you don't see the deaths, associated with marijuana. But there's a long, slow process that brings our kids to dangerous drugs, and the marijuana has been contributing to that. I like to use an illustration. I use a number. I pull out a number, 19,354. Now, numbers have to have context. It's just a number, right? So I was trying to think about why in the world we can't think more about marijuana as being dangerous, because we see it happening to kids. But in our communities, we're in small towns. I'm in a small town, Yorktown. I think of 5 kids always in trouble with marijuana. There might be more. There probably are. But you can think, there are about 5 that are always being impacted. And I said, well, our town's like every other town. I go to another town, they're saying the same thing. I go out of state, they're saying the same thing.
Right.
So I wondered about doing the math. And I thought about how many cities and towns are there? So the census tells us there are 19,354 cities or towns.
Okay.
Take the 5.
Right.
Now we have a city of 100,000 Justins that have been terribly damaged by this drug, and we simply can't allow it to continue to happen. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, interesting way, because there's more than 5. So for example, you might have a bunch of kids smoking pot but not all of them will get addicted.
Right.
But the
Right.
thing is,
Yeah.
we don't know which ones will.
That's
And that's
right.
what the problem is. And of course, it's going to be age determinant if they can buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's going to stop these kids once it's legal? It's just like alcohol. You
Well,
know, what's going to stop them from smoking pot once it is legal?
It is creating, you know, it's creating a feeling among our kids that, well, it's legal in these states. So
Absolutely.
it must be okay. And the perception is, and there's research to back this up, the perception of the danger of marijuana is lessening among our young people, and that's dangerous.
That is
because
dangerous.
it's going to cause changes.
So it's another area of
Yeah.
concern for us.
And then there's vaping, which
is big,
there are
huge.
oils, there are things they can put in an electronic cigarette that are marijuana, and
Right.
that's a concern because you can't detect it as easily. But
and
it's
the
very
schools
dangerous.
are having a very serious
Yeah.
problem with that.
So that's an issue we have to think about.
Yes.
And so one thing I'm doing now is I just started a podcast.
Okay.
And
yes,
you're,
I was
you're
on
a
it.
guest.
It was very good, actually.
And we call it the drug crisis, faces behind the struggle.
Yeah.
And we've got some victims. What I'm trying to do is reach out to people involved. I have in any number of ways. I've got a interview right now with Joe Fold, who created the campaign workshop in Washington, D.C., who talks about using tragedy and difficulty
Right.
as advocacy to get things done, change the laws.
This is a
do things
big
like
deal,
that.
this podcast. What I'd like to ask you as we wrap up is, what suggestion would you recommend to a parent who has a child that's using?
Well, that's a very good question. First of all, don't think that you can't be a victim. You must take it seriously because so many people say it'll never happen to them. And number two is to love your child and to take care of them and do everything you can. Understand what they're going through. And if they've gotten to a certain point where it's a disease, understand it's a disease that has to be treated.
Just like
And
cancer.
so you have to be sure that they get medical attention, the attention they need. And if they have to go into rehab for 6 months, it has to be done.
Yeah.
Now, it's very difficult because the insurance
It is
programs have
difficult.
been hard on people. And it's getting better, hopefully, and there's new federal money. It took a year to get this going, but when I was at the conference, I learned there's a lot of new things in place.
Okay, well, Jeffrey, we have finished the 28 minutes, and it's gone so fast. I loved having you on, and we'd love to have you on again because you offer so much to our communities.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was really nice having you.
Thank you.
Learned so much more about you.